I want to talk about intake diversion from a behavior perspective. So how can we effectively divert some animals, keep them in their homes, maybe solve some simple behavior problems for people. I want to talk a little bit about how Lollypop Farm admissions works. So we are open admission, but we do utilize coordinated entry. So that means that we strongly encourage, we don't require appointments. So if someone shows up with their animal, they're in dire straits, they really can't keep them or wait for an appointment, then we will admit their animal. And we don't turn people away because of any behavior or medical issues. We do coach people through rehoming options, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we do offer a lot of alternative services through Lollipop, and I'll talk about a lot of those as well. So we do low intensity neuter, we do end of life services, we do a food pantry, and behavior help. And in 2018, about 30% of all of our admissions were scheduled. And in 2019, we added this little pop-up to our admissions page in an online form, so it changed some of our languaging. And now we average about 50% of our admissions are scheduled. And the shelter director, Eric Sandel, just told me yesterday that last month was actually, we were up with admissions, but the percentage of scheduled appointments were higher than ever. So we have more coming in than they're scheduled, so we know who's coming and we can prepare for them. Like most shelters in the Northeast, our admissions numbers overall have been decreasing pretty dramatically. So we're down by almost half in the last 10 to 12 years, in 15 years. And you know, it's a good thing by and large, right? Like, it's this weird conversation of where like, oh, what do we do now? We're doing a good job. They're not coming into the shelter. So what do we go from there? Like, how do we do better? You know, what are we going to do with our intake increasing people more? So when you're thinking about intake diversion, the best time to catch people is before things go sideways with their animals. So we want people to already be thinking of us as a resource before they have an issue with their animal that's just untenable for them. So that is just too much for them to handle. If we're trying to catch people when they call up for an appointment or when they walk in for an appointment, it's very, very hard to divert an intake at that point. You're going to have a pretty low success rate if you're waiting until that time to try to divert an intake. But if you are at the top of people's minds when they have an issue and they come to you early stages, they're not waiting until issues at stage 4 to contact you, then that is really where the opportunity lies. So bear with me while I make an extended metaphor that I've been thinking about for a long time, but haven't talked about in front of a large group of people before. So I think my shelter should be like car dealerships. So my car dealership, I drive a used beat-up Prius that's like 12 years old. So it's been a while since I bought a car. And I still go back to my dealership to get it serviced because it's super nice. They have like a lovely waiting room, there's a fireplace. It's like a nice place to hang out. They always give me the straight deal. So I'm going back to them for services. And when it's time in a couple of years or more to buy a new car, I'm going to go back to them because I trust them. I know they're a resource. I've been using them regularly. And I could extend it even more. I think that you know, when I go to the car dealership, they say, who do they have on the lot? It's like, who's in the shelter? How does that match what I want to have? So I think there's a lot of similarities, but we can take some lessons from good car dealerships, like make it pleasant to be in there, provide services so that you retain the client as a lifelong client, and the next time they're going to adopt an animal, or the next time the car breaks down, or the cat is outside the litter box, they're going to come to you to ask questions and not go to a different mechanic or a different person who's maybe not going to be able to help them as well, or you know, reach out to their friends on Facebook and get lots of different information that's not going to be very useful. So it's really sort of what we strive to do at Lollypop Farm is really be a resource for people and not just a shelter that does admissions and adoptions. We do so much more than that. So to sort of back up a bit and talk about what happens if we don't catch them at that time when it's not a critical issue. So what if we only interact with them when they've already decided pretty firmly that they're going to rehome their pet. One thing that we do is we provide a rehoming courtesy listing, and we've done this for several years on our website. We used to just host it ourselves. Our web people would kind of monitor it. And what we started to do more recently, within the last year, is to use adoptapet.com. And that has been really, really successful. So we have seen a lot of animals get rehomed through that website without coming to our shelter. And the way that it works that's different than hosting your own rehoming page is that the Adopt Pet people take care of everything, they help monitor content, and they do charge an adoption fee, and it goes to your shelter. So when we were hosting a rehoming page, we said people weren't allowed to charge fees, basically, for their pets. They're charging an adoption fee. But Adopt a Pet does charge a fee, so there is some, there's a financial sort of investment in the animal at the time of adoption, but it doesn't go to Adopt a Pet, it goes back to your shelter. So it's kind of a cool program I wanted to make people aware of, and we have placed a lot of animals, and I think we're one of Adopt a Pet's top shelters right now, so go be the next top shelter and try it at adoptapet.com. And the thought here behind rehoming courtesy listings is that people should be the best ones at placing their animals in the new home, which I think is sometimes true, and that's not always true. But if they're getting some coaching and tips through Adopt a Pet, I think that is working out really well also. Well, the one downside to this I will say is that, and I don't know that's necessarily a downside, but people do think when they adopt through Adopt a Pet, some people think that they're adopting through Lollypop. So I'll get training clients who are like, oh, I got my dog from Lollypop, and I'll be like, I don't recognize that dog. And then talking a little bit more if that they actually got them on the rehoming website. It's not that big a deal, but if you're concerned about your brand, something like that, it might be. So we do offer pre-intake behavior consultations, so sort of like emergency behavior consults for people who have already decided to admit or are calling and asking to schedule an appointment to admit, but we don't make it mandatory. So I know there are some shelters who do require mandatory pre-admission consultations. We have not tried that model yet. We really are depending on self-selection by the family. And it's one of those things where you can be the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If we are working with a person who's already decided that they have to give up their animal, it is going to be really hard to convince them to then follow a really detailed behavior modification plan to address the fact that the dog is biting their visitors or whatever. So sometimes we do these behavior consultations over the phone, sometimes we do them in person, sometimes if the person's willing, we'll go to the person's house, and we offer these either at low or no cost. It sort of depends, we'll just go on a donation basis. But it's really, in my experience, not super successful at getting people to actually keep their animals, because by the time they call up to make the appointment or they are actually walking through the door, they have decided. And it's really hard to convince them that actually you just take the cover off the litter box, or maybe add a new litter box at a different location, that your cat will probably go back in the box. They're fatigued at that point, and it's very hard. One way that we do try to think about catching them pre-intake is we do try and think about our return rate. But returns can be okay. If you have a higher return rate, I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. We do try to make really good matches with pre-adoption counseling. We do have conversation-based adoptions. And we do staff training all the time to try to keep up to date with sort of the cutting edge of how to do adoptions. And it works pretty well. We have a pretty low return rate. We do also have a post-adoption follow-up program where the adoption counselors actually call the people at a set number of weeks out to see how everything is going, or they send them an email survey, sort of depending on their preference. And then based on those conversations, sometimes we will identify that someone needs some help and they'll get a free behavior consultation with someone from the behavior department, or we'll just have a phone call with them or something like that. So it's a way to sort of catch things early because we're checking in with people regularly. But again, I do want to stress, if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. I'm really not a big proponent of the term forever home, because I think that it's sometimes not the right home for the animal or for the person, and I'd much rather that they split up and find appropriate matches. So we don't like demonize returns. We do try to be really open about people bringing their animal back to us if it's not working out. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about some of the ways that we try to stay at the top of people's minds. So thinking back to the car dealership example, like how often do you really buy a new car? Like for me, it's a long time. I don't know, for the average person, maybe it's 5 or 6 years. But then when you think about when you watch TV, like the percentage of car commercials that are on TV is ridiculous compared to how often people actually buy cars. But the thing is, they want to stay at the top of people's minds. So when you think about buying a car, you want to say, oh, I just saw this commercial for this car dealership. Maybe I'll go there. So really, we try to think about any interaction with a community member is a way to educate them about our offerings. And we really try to be a full service sort of, I'm not really community centered, but we're sort of heading in that direction, I think. And we want good word of mouth. So any interaction, we try to educate people. So we are looking at things like vaccination. We do things like vaccination clinics. We have outreach events where we do seminars or classes, like some of the ones I teach on pet behavior, or we do also do pet wellness clinics or seminars. And we have fundraising events that sort of raise awareness about our organization in the community and also fundraise for us. But all of those events, we also take the opportunity to tell people, like, here are the other services we offer, so that, you know, when the cat does pee outside the litter box, they're thinking, oh, maybe I'll call Lollypop Farm and see if they have any tips for me. We're not just a place where you're going to come when you're at the end of your rope. One thing that I think we do really well is we have a great social media team, and we have had a couple of video series that we've put out about behavior issues, and they've been really successful on social media and shared a lot. And so we wanted to share the 2 different campaigns with you. You can find all of them on the Lollypop Farm YouTube page. And the first one is we had a couple years ago a grant from Maddie's fund to make 5 videos on behavior issues, and we've selected some of the top reasons that people bring their pets to be admitted. And the one that I want to show you is living with an energetic dog. So we have an amazing videographer who is on contract with us now. Her name's Kelly Hildemeyer. I'm happy to send you the name. I checked with her first. She is great, and she has done these amazing edits to this video. So they're all like under 90 seconds, and they all just address things. We have one on litter box usage that I'm going to show you a little later, how to pet a cat, things like that. But basically, we have gotten exposure that we wouldn't have had because we're sort of reaching people in this different way. Another thing that we did last fall is we had a 6-week positive training challenge. So every week we gave people a different task to think about. We posted the video on Facebook and encouraged people to comment with sort of their engagement with the content. So like the last week was accepting your pet's quirks and like what are the quirky behaviors that your pet does that you know, maybe look annoying or are sort of irksome sometimes, but are, you know, just cute things that they do. But I want to show you the one that we got the most engagement on was actually the one we were sort of the most, like had a little bit of anxiety about because it's about getting rid of your aversive training tools. So we thought we'd get a lot of pushback, and it was actually the one that got the most shares, the most likes, the most engagement. And so we were pleasantly surprised with that.
Welcome back to the Lollipop Farm Positive Training Challenge. This week we're talking about getting rid of your aversive training techniques and tools. Aversive training techniques are using anything that your animal will work to avoid. So things that cause pain or fear or stress in order to change a behavior. Some examples of aversive training tools are shock collars or prong collars or choke chains, rolled up newspapers, squirt bottles, or soda can filled with pennies used on both dogs and cats. Those are all things that can increase the fear and stress and anxiety in your pet. While these techniques may have worked in the past to change problematic behavior with your animal, just because it's effective doesn't mean it's a tool that we should use, because if we can use methods that strengthen our bond instead of weaken it, then that's always going to be a better choice. So get rid of those aversive training tools today, throw them in the trash, and start to use positive replacements instead. If you have questions about how to address problematic behaviors from a positive reinforcement framework, give us a call at our helpline to have a conversation with a counselor to get a positive and humane training plan in place for them. You can also tune in next week where we talk more about how to teach new behaviors using positive reinforcement.
So believe it or not, the original end of that video was like so much sassier, and the communications department like toned it way down. We were like, oh, we wanted like a, you know, the Office space where they all like go in field and like kick the printer. Like, that was the concept, and then that's what we got to at the end. So I still like it, but you know, I'm a fan of the director's cut. So. But yeah, we thought we were going to get some pushback because we do have some high-profile shock collar trainers in the community, and we didn't hear any negative feedback on that at all, so we were very pleasantly surprised. So both of those videos are referencing one important program that we have, which is our Pet Peeve Behavior Helpline. It's not a hotline, so there is not a person on call answering calls. It is a helpline, so people leave a message. And then either a trained volunteer counselor, like this is Bruce. This picture was taken yesterday. I was so excited. I was like looking through my photos and I was like, I don't have any pet peeve volunteer photos. How is that possible? And then I heard Ruth come in and I was like, hey, Ruth. Tomorrow. So we have just a handful of volunteers, and that's really one of the struggles of the program is that it is really hard to train someone to be competent to the level of counseling people about behavior issues over the phone, and also be able to handle the emotional component of the human's emotions in that situation. So Ruth is actually a retired therapist, so she's amazing at this. So we love her, and we love all the other Pet Peeve volunteers, but it's a really tough job, and if you don't have training and a lot of experience, then people burn out really quickly. So it has been hard to find volunteers to staff that, and we haven't even spent the time to have a class recently because it's just been too hard. And so what happens is that a lot of times the Pet Peeve volunteers are sort of triaging those calls, so the calls that they can handle, they're doing, and then the ones that they can't, they're transferring to the behavior department, which is working really well. We also have a direct training line that our call center links into, so people might get transferred to the direct behavior line. If they call in, it's a different number than the Pet Peeves. If they call the main number, then they're probably going to end up at our training line. And we do a pretty high volume of calls on both lines. Yeah, you have a question.
How big is your behavior team?
Oh, good question. The question is, how big is our behavior team? So I will tell you, when I started in 2011, it was me and one other person. And since then, we've grown to me and then 4 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff. And one is very part-time, she's there 1 day a week. So yeah, it's been very excited to grow the program. And everything else is sort of growing with it. You know, we didn't handle that. You know, we honestly probably did. I wish I had better records now. It was crazy in the old days. I'm really glad we have more people now. Any other questions? I realize I didn't pause for questions. Yes.
Running a helplines, the hardest part I always found was actually in. It was like the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like sometimes the conversation, so just to kind of recap what you said, sometimes the conversation is that it's okay. Like it's okay to rehome. It's okay to say that this isn't the right match. Like you don't have to try to shoehorn this in if it's not the right thing for everybody. If it's affecting everybody's quality of life, then it's not the right thing. And it's very hard, especially with volunteers. They're coming in a few hours a week. They're not living in it like we all do. And it can be hard, but you know, when you get those volunteers who can do it, I mean, they're just like gold, like it's amazing. Yes?
Alright, I was just wondering, how many adoptions do you guys do?
We do about 6,000, right? I'm like looking at the other Lollypop people in the room, and that's been like fairly steady for a few years. Yeah. You have any questions? Yeah.
How do you train your staff or, try to keep this concept in a positive light? People want to either return or become a pet in my shelter. I get mad at them, I think they're lazy, I think trying hard enough, and I don't like that.
Yeah. So how to get past like blaming the person, basically, right, for rehoming the pet. It's a struggle, and I think that you can see, in my experience, you can see with like a new employee who comes in, they all go through that stage. They all go through the stage where they're like, I told them that the dog was going to do that, and he did it, and now they're bringing him back because of that. And it's hard, and I think it's something that probably everybody in the room, at all the organizations, have struggled with. And I think you just have to keep talking about it and just trying to make it a part of your culture that like, it's okay if it doesn't work out, but we struggle too, for sure. Any other questions, Amy? So one thing that my department does as well is we do public classes and consultations, and most of our training clients are actually not Lollypop adopters. So the majority of our training clients adopt their pets from other rescues or get them from breeders. And so it's one of the places that I have the most direct interaction with, where we actually are getting people to be included in the Lollypop family. So sometimes their first interaction is with us, and then maybe they become a donor, or maybe they become a volunteer. So it's kind of fun, and we started in just 1 location. We now have 3 locations for dog training classes. We're basically a full dog training school. We offer sport classes, we offer multiple levels of basic manners classes, puppy classes. We have specialty classes like feisty fighter for reactive dogs, or bravery boost for fearful dogs or shy dogs. We do some 3-week classes, and so we really try to make it fun. And we have a good reputation in the community. We're one of the biggest training schools in the community. So it's a place where we interact with a lot of people and really try, to do a good job to continue to be at the top of people's minds. And I have so many clients who, they took a puppy class with me, and then 4 years later, they'll be like, this new behavior is cropping up. And I always encourage that. I'm always telling people when I interact with them that, like, I am here as a resource for you. So whenever you need it, email me. I always say, if you can send a picture, like a selfie with you and your dog, like, it will help me remember who you are. But, here to be a resource, so please reach back out. So we have really good success with that. We have a lot of long-term clients. We also offer behavior consultations. So I do cat behavior consultations. The rest of the staff, some of them are learning to do cats, and they also do dogs. I do dogs as well. And we offer those in-home or on-site. So this is, the cat at the bottom is a client that I saw on Thursday. His name's Cody. I see he's over there. And he was helping me take his notes there. And it's really, again, really successful. We don't actually even, it's on our website, but we don't advertise that program at all. It's just word of mouth. And it's something that as we get everybody trained to handle the tougher issues, we'll probably start to advertise more. But right now we book out at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance, if not more. And yeah, it's really providing a service that is needed in the community. Yes. How far do we go? We have a set price within a 25-mile radius, and then above that we just charge mileage. So I've gone for, I'm trying to think the farthest. I think I've driven like an hour and a half. So we're in Rochester. I went to Buffalo once. But yeah, it's so, if people are willing to pay mileage, then they can get us. But we also we don't officially have a low income program, although it's something that we're looking at, an income qualified training discount. But we do, if people self-identify as not being able to afford training, we work with them and just ask them, like, what can you afford? It goes to Lollypop. So we're all on salaries, we're not on commission. And so we just try to get people the help that they need. And we do generate revenue for the shelter. So we're in the top 5 programs for generating revenue, setting aside philanthropy, obviously. But it's cool, and I'm really proud that we do actually generate revenue, and we are mission driven, because our mission at Lollypop Farm is to preserve the human animal bond. Yes.
You do video consultations?
I have done video consultations for cats in particular. So I do have a client in Brooklyn. But we haven't done it with dogs quite as much. If someone wanted to and they were quite far away, I would consider it depending on the issue. But yeah, that would definitely be issue dependent. We do often, if someone is far away, we'll try to do some research and refer them to someone else. Any other questions? Oh, and because, as I'm sure you all know, dog and cat training, animal training in general, is not a regulated industry. It's not like being a licensed vet tech or a veterinarian. We do try to hold ourselves to a high standard and all work towards credentialing. So, as you heard in my intro, I have credentials through the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. And then my staff is all either already certified professional dog trainers or working towards that, or we do have one Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner on staff as well. So we always try to really encourage the professionalization of the field and making sure that we're keeping up to date and providing the best information. That is really tied to my next point, which is that training methodology really matters. If you're looking at intake in particular, training methodology matters. So we just had the board approve a position statement on training. We advocate for the use of evidence-based humane pet training and behavior modification methods which foster trust and build positive human-animal relationships. We are opposed to punishment-based techniques that can lead to anxiety, fear, distress, or pain. And I just realized that you guys don't know that there's a screen right here, so I don't have that memorized. That would be crazy. That would be like weird. There's a screen here, so what you guys see there, I see here. So I was reading it. Anyway, so I was really excited when we finally got the board to approve this, because I've been really pushing for years that we need to take a position. Like, we are an animal, I think we are an animal advocacy organization, and we need to advocate on behalf of our companion animals. And training techniques that are outdated or use pain or fear or intimidation is just not appropriate, and they can result in increased intake. So to talk about one case study, and hopefully she goes home today, we have a dog, Ginger, who is supposed to be a Manchester Terrier. She's like a little red terrier-y thing. And she had been through a couple other local trainers, and they were using outdated methods on her for her dog reactivity. And when she was admitted, her people had tried a lot of things, but they hadn't been trying the right things. They hadn't been trying things that were up to date. They hadn't been trying things that were humane. And they'd been training her for a long time. So some of these things had had a big effect on her behavior. We assessed her. We realized, yeah, she looks pretty crazy when she sees another dog. But when you actually get to meet, she's pretty playful. She likes them. She just gets so excited. And because she'd been punished for this, it was turning into this big downward spiral. So we worked with her for about 6 to 8 weeks in behavior modification, and actually worked with our medical team as well to get her on some behavior meds. And she is doing really, really well, and had a potential adopter as of yesterday who really liked her, and we're going to come back in today to see her. So it's something that I think we talk about a lot in theory, and we say these training methods that use pain can affect their behavior. They can have this and that, studies show, but it literally happens every day. We see the effect of it in the shelter. And if we can be the ones at the top of people's minds, giving them good information as an animal welfare field in general, then we're gonna see intake go down again. People are gonna try good training first. They're not gonna resort to these methods that are not based in science. So really what I would recommend would be to educate yourself. Here's a bunch of resources. These are all great things to Google and read if you haven't already. And really, if you don't have a behavior department, or you don't have someone on staff who is credentialed or working towards credentialed or has education about it, I would recommend, if you're looking for a dog training in particular, sort of distance learning situation, Empire Academy or Academy for Dog Trainers are both good in terms of the online options for, they're not strictly online, but in terms of the distance learning dog training programs that are out there. Any questions for anyone? Yes. Oh my gosh. You know what? I feel like you're like a plant because I would have forgotten, but we actually just this year, it just got approved in the budget. We're going to do a one-day workshop in January on shelter behavior. It'll be on a Thursday. They thought Thursday would be easier for people. I don't know. But good feedback. It'll be a Thursday in January. We're going to have a networking event the night before that's a pub quiz, so get excited. And yeah, we're going to do a day of this, and we're hopefully going to make it an annual thing, so maybe we'll switch it around every other year. Good question, though, and I was in my head, totally going to forget to say that. And if you want, I'm going to put my email address at the end, and I also have cards, but if you want to email me, I can get you that information as soon as it's out, in terms of what the data is and how to register. So quickly want to talk about when diversion is not appropriate. So I'm a firm believer that we're shelters, and as shelters we have a responsibility to shelter an animal who needs it. And for me, safety is the most important thing. So if there's a safety issue, either for the animal or for the human, then I think that we need to prioritize admission. And it might be we're counseling an end-of-life decision, but I think it is important if we think someone is in jeopardy that we need to shelter them. And there can be welfare implications to denying admissions. There's not great information about what happens to the ones that we defer. I don't know of any studies that have looked at this. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of, right? It's hard to say what happens to them. But based on just a few things we know anecdotally, it can have an effect on welfare to deny admissions. And we do really want to consider quality of life. So if there's a quality of life issue with the humans or the animals in the home, I think that we need to prioritize admission. And then another sort of sticky issue is that when you divert the easy animals, you get fewer easy to place animals, but you get the same or maybe slightly less number of difficult to place animals. And we've definitely seen that in our shelter. So for dogs, our overall admissions have gone down, but the number of dogs with being admitted with a history of showing aggression has decreased, but not proportionally. So that means that there are fewer easy dogs to offset the difficult to place dogs. So, our difficult dogs are kind of here, and our easy to place dogs are kind of going here. Because if you have a little fluffy, sweet thing and you're moving, and you put it on Facebook, someone's going to take your animal off of Facebook. But if you have an animal who has some litter box issues, or maybe some aggression issues, you put them on Facebook, it's going to be harder to get that animal rehomed. So the tougher to rehome animals are often coming to us, but that's our job, right? To help them and to try to get them safely into homes. It does create inventory issues sometimes, so we don't have what people want. And how many people are in the Northeast? Okay, cool. Like, when's the last time you saw like a litter of puppies? I see like 2 a year now. Like, it used to be, I've been in this field only for like a decade or so, but we used to have so many puppies, and now like, we have no puppies anymore. People are always asking. And I put this picture because we do have transport partners in the South, so we are, as a lot of places are, bringing up dogs from the South to try to solve some of this inventory issue. But we do still have this core of difficult to live with, difficult to work with and place animals that even if we bring up animals from the South, that doesn't change that we still have these cats with the history of litter box avoidance that we need to get as well. Someone have a question? Yes.
How do you be How do you kind of market that in a way that'll make them desirable?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what we do for cats specifically the next lecture, but, the question was like, how do you market the difficult to place animals? So we do have, the social media team has like a timeline, so like if you've been here a certain number of days, then you get like this photo shoot. And then if you've been here a certain number of other days, you get like a video. So they have a schedule for the ones who are staying longer, they get special things, and like the first one is like the photo booth photo shoot, So we do try to market that. We do incentivize adopting animals with tougher issues with, we give them like a coupon for free training lesson. Like if anyone calls up and they have an issue and it's a Lollypop alumni, like we will help them and we're not going to charge them. But for the ones that we know like might be more difficult, we're like, here's a certificate for free training. So that way it's like we really are trying to stack the deck that they'll call us if there's an issue. And then the other thing is we do have some animals that have to speak with the behavior department before they go home. And part of that is like, I want to give them some tips for transitioning into the home. But the bigger thing is, because we all know that when people are in adoptions about to take home an animal, they hear like 10% of what you say. That's generous. They hear not a lot of what you say. And so the bigger thing that we try to do with that is like, we're introducing ourselves as a resource. We're like, look, we're human. We're here for you. We work here. And we want to know if your animal's not doing well. So if we have a cat or a dog in particular that is having issues that we think, okay, the average adopter is going to need help, then we will have them speak to us first. Yeah, does that answer your question? Any other questions? Yes.
You said that your outreach team, they have a. You guys also have a team like your medical people and your behavior people where you walk through the kennels every day? Some sort of other like pathways?
Yes, we do have rounds, and the way that we do them is that the shelter director and then the shelter managers of the different divisions do rounds in the morning, and then they bring questions for me and the medical director in the afternoon. So like we do kind of like two different ones. In my own department, we meet weekly to discuss all of our behavior modification cases and make sure they're progressing in the way that we want. If we have an individual, actually, good segue to, what?
20 minutes left.
Oh, I have 20 minutes left. Oh, okay. So I didn't realize it's the other talk, but we do use behavior modification medication sometimes. So like we might coordinate with the clinic one-on-one, that's usually done just on a case-by-case basis for that. But you said 20 minutes? Sorry. Okay, very good. Time for lots of questions. So we're going to do this. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I lost track of it.
Yeah, you were saying that they just do it every day.
They do it every day. Yeah, they do it every day. I think they don't do it Mondays and maybe Sundays. There's a couple days that they don't. But yeah, they have basically like an inventory sheet that they're writing down any questions and then following up with the appropriate people, and yeah, they do it. Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
With the extended length of stay, how do you address that with the animals that are there for well above the average length of stay?
Yeah.
So solutions.
Okay, yeah. So the question is how to address the longer length of stay for the tougher to place animals. That's like a whole, that could be like a whole talk in and of itself. But I think you have to make sure you have a really good enrichment program and that your animal care staff are engaged with the enrichment program. At Lollypop, the animal care staff is who does the enrichment. It's not even the behavior staff. Like we help them, support them if needed, or like help them try a new technique or something, but really they're the ones doing it. And we do try to look at creative housing options, like for cats in particular. Can we get them in an office if we know that they're going to be here for a really long time and they don't have any issues right now, but like we just know it's going to be here. Because we also have animals who are on holds for different reasons. And so like even though they may not even have issues now, we don't want them to develop issues while they're here waiting on their abandonment hold or their law enforcement hold. So, I mean, just trying to get good enrichment, good stress reduction. We started a field trip program, so for dogs who've been here, I think it's longer than a week or it's longer than 10 days. I don't know either, sorry. I should know what I know. So they have to have been there for a certain number of days on the adoption floor, and then they will be eligible for the field trip program. So in the morning before we're open, volunteers who've been trained and approved can take them out for field trips and go for hikes or like go to different places. We have like a list of approved places that they can take them to. So that's been helping too, because it's just good to like get out of the shell. You know, we have a lovely facility. We're on a farm, so we have great trails and stuff to walk on. But it's, you know, if you're there for a month, like, and you're walking the same trails every day, that can get kind of boring too. So that's the kind of a cool new program that's been nice. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
So when you have the hard to adopt animal and somebody's about to adopt them, do you do actual pre-adoption, dog and the person together?
Yeah, so the question is, do we do like an actual like training lesson pre-adoption with the animal and the person? It depends on the issue, but sometimes we do. Like with Ginger, yes, they're gonna get a training lesson, a training demonstration before they go home, and I think they actually got that yesterday. But we do it on a case-by-case basis. So we try, we're very conscious of trying not to put up a lot of barriers to adoption for these tougher to place, and just more about like how can we support the people, and again, hopefully be at the top of their mind to call if there's an issue. The program that was in place before I started was called the Required Training Program, which meant that if you were adopting a dog with maybe tougher behavior issues, you had to pay a mandatory $60 fee, and then you could take classes, right? Then you could take classes with us, and that fee would go towards that, which is heavily discounted, or you could take classes elsewhere and we would refund your fee. And we were doing kind of a big shakeup of things, and I had never liked that policy. And I was like, hey, can we get rid of required training? And so now they get a voucher for free lessons instead of having to pay more for a dog with tougher issues. I was like, so, and I actually made the argument, and I was right. I was like, you know, our classes are being filled sometimes by these dogs who are paying $60. Like, I can fill those classes with full paying clients if you're thinking about it from a revenue standpoint. And I can do a half-an-hour lesson with this dog to address the one issue that crops up in the home. That's going to be much more cost effective. That's going to get that dog in a home faster. And that's what has happened. Any other questions? Okay. think that in general, I'm a big, I think that behavior people often get sort of pigeonholed into either cats or dogs, and there's like way more dog behavior people. I love working with both. I think it's great, but I love talking about cats just because I think they don't get as much attention behavior-wise as dogs. And I think that if we're thinking about the Northeast in particular, we have a bigger population of cats, and I think we have more opportunity both for intake diversion for cats and less risk if we do work with cats with tougher behavior issues. Because if you're working with a 140-pound dog de Bordeaux that has aggression issues, like that's risky. Like there's a lot of risk associated with placing that animal. But if you're working with a 10-pound domestic short hair who might have some overstimulation aggression issues, it's a lot less risk. That cat is not gonna kill someone. And I think that we do have to think about things like that working in the field that we're in. But I think that for us, and this is also talking with the shelter director, Erin Sandel, one of our big problem areas is large groups of under-socialized cats. They're not ferals, they've lived in a house, but maybe one person lived there, and then they're like, oh no, like, Uncle Ernie died, I went to his house and he's got 50 cats, like, what do we do? So I'll talk in the next talk, if you're staying, about how we deal with some of our under-socialized cats and some new programs that we're trying. But we have successfully done some intake diversion with these large groups, working through local rescues. So just creating partnerships with local rescues, having them help at the time of like finding the cats or at the time the cat's needing admission, coordinating with them then instead of admitting them to us and then trying to get them out to rescue groups. So there's been some successful intake diversion with that. I think as shelters, what we can think about for this is when we interact with the animals, what can we do to help, cats in particular stay in homes? And one, I think, an area of opportunity is foster kitten socialization. So we get kittens, when they're super, super young, we have a good chance at giving them really good socialization so that if something happens and they do need to be rehomed the next time around, they've had this good solid foundation in kitten socialization so they can move easily, roll with the punches, they're more adaptable, they're more confident. The other thing that I think that we can really do a better job of is promoting litter box best practices. And this is something that I'll say we struggle with even at Lollypop. Like we have these big, beautiful colony rooms and I go in and they have covered litter boxes. I'm like, get these covered litter boxes out of here. They're like, the people don't want to see the litter. I'm like, I don't care. Like we need to be demonstrating like the best litter box practices in our shelters. And obviously a cat in a cage is hard to do exactly what I'm going to talk about next, but you gotta do the best you can. That's my cat Johnny. He's so cute. But if I'm doing a litter box consultation for someone, like at their house, this is basically the same tips that we're gonna work on with them in 90% of the cases. So just getting the information out there that this is best practices is important. Good. Cool, I think we're out of time, yeah?